Hello and welcome to the Grit and Bear It podcast, everyone. It is a Sunday, April 23rd. If you are watching this on the live stream, if you are checking us out on the audio version of this, it is a Monday, April 24th, and it is time to talk about the most wonderful time of the year. It is playoff hockey time, baby, everyone. The Calder Cup playoffs are underway. We've gotten a few series out of the way. And since all the other pawns have now come to the table and have eaten, some have left, it is now time for the Bears and Providence to get on their way to start their part of the journey. And here we are to talk about the next part of the playoffs that involves your Hershey Bears taking on the Charlotte Checkers. And joining me from Field Pass Hockey, also blogs with Bears Hockey Nation as well, live tweets, a lot of Bears stuff, almost double what I do. Corey Swartz, friend of the show, partner in hockey, joining me. Corey, thank you for joining me, brother.
Hey, Richard, thanks for having me. Like you said, it's the best time of year. Playoffs are finally here for us. Say that as if being exempted from the first round is a bad thing. It is not. It's a great thing. So we're happy to be here for sure.
Oh, we definitely are. I mean, that's what, at least during the first part of the season, that's what you want to do. You want to get to this point where you have that week off, to where you can just sit back, relax, and know that your hard work paid off getting you to this point, that you got your first round bye. I mean, yes, we were number two of 1 and 2, but hey, you know what doesn't do that? Getting a 5-minute power play against Charlotte by a rookie. It was last week. It's in the past. You can't control that. It's fine. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about the series up and coming, and that is the Hershey Bears taking on their rivals of the South, the Charlotte Checkers. And very fitting that we're going to be playing this team, in my opinion. Very fitting, very appropriate, because I sort of have a theory that if Hershey wants to put a 12th in the rafters there at Giant Center, they are going to have to exercise some playoff demons to do this. And two stand in our path right now within our own division, and one is staring us right in the face. The Charlotte Checkers, a team that punched us in the gut and shoved us out the door in 18-19.
Yeah, like you said, I love the turn of the phrase from John Walton's call of the Evgeny Kuznetsov goal back in 2018. Charlotte's just been a place where the Bears have struggled. I mean, last year it was good to get down there. This year, I should say, really, was the Bears' first time really getting down there and getting some wins, right? It was some much needed relief there to get a couple of wins down there. Well, I guess it was more just the one, if I remember correctly. A couple of losses beyond 60 minutes this season, if memory serves. But the Bears have had a much better overall record against the Checkers this season. Some of that's a little bit of a cool down from the Carolina affiliation. They haven't been bad at all this season by any stretch. But getting into a playoff series, it makes sense. The Atlantic Division is going to be the toughest to come out of in order to, get to the conference finals, I think, out of, at least in the East, no doubt. But it's going to be a great challenge for the Bears. I mean, you're looking at Charlotte right now and potentially Providence in the next round, should they defeat the Hartford Wolfpack, which is anything but a sure bet at this point, in my opinion. But you'd have to go down some demons in some places where the Bears have suffered playoff defeats, and that includes Hartford as well. It's their first time back since 2015. So, I think, and when they beat the Bears, I should say, really. So no matter where you land, there's going to be some place where you're going to have that bad memory, a bad taste in your mouth that you're going to want to get rid of before you even think about playing in a best of 7.
Agreed. For those of you who do not know what we were talking about, the Bears did move on the 18-19 playoffs, beating the Bridgeport Sound Tigers at that point in 5 games, only to get swept by. I should know. I was there. I saw it all, Gandalf. I saw it all. So, and the series across from us, Hartford and Providence, I think is going to be a sneaky competitive series, as a lot of people thought Springfield was just going to beat Hartford. Springfield is just so loaded offensively. St. Louis sent a good amount of guys to them. AHL All-Star goaltender Joel Hofer, and they lose, like, I think if I read on Twitter, like a combined like 14-5. And if you count in their last two regular season games, they lost by a combined total of 20-5 in their last four games, playoffs included. So yeah, just kind of surprising that Hartford was the one who came out of that series and is going to play Providence. And I posted this on Twitter, I know, to you. Are we kind of sleeping on Hartford? And Bears fans, we'll get to Hershey and Charlotte here in a little bit, but it is important to take a look at who's on the other side of the bracket. So are we sleeping on Hartford a little bit?
I think a little bit, yes. They're a team that, they've benefited from the structure, the increased amount of teams that are able to make the playoffs and get this chance to play in the bubble. Maybe the first team to really, possibly move on and cause some real upsets as a result of this. This is a team that's just been on fire. And like you said, Springfield seemed like the ideal team to take them down, right? Hartford had an 8-game winning streak that almost ended to the last game of the season. But guess who bookended both those games that beat them? It was Springfield. Springfield beat them before that 8-game winning streak, and they beat them in the last game of the season to end that 8-game winning streak. And, that was a lot of what got Hartford in the playoffs, was just earning a lot of points down the stretch here, but they even had the added effect of not having their starting goaltender, Louis Domingue, and their top, I think it was their top scorer, Johnny Brodzinski, who are both up as extras with the Rangers right now in their playoff run. So the fact that they came out and, much of that series looked like men against boys, tic-tac-toe passing, wide open blown assignments by the Thunderbirds. Springfield just burnt out, I think. And, it reflected in the final scores. It was the most lopsided series, I think, of the play-in round so far, at least in the East. So, it wasn't close, and the Thunderbirds didn't deserve it. Joel Hofer, as you said, was kind of the X factor there to a lot of people, myself included. I kind of figured he could step in and steal a game. And to his credit, you have a lesser goaltender in there. I think that, it might have been even worse possibly too. I mean, the last game looks worse because they got scored 2 empty net goals on, but it still wasn't close, right? Hofer did as much as he could, but again, when he's hanging out to dry, what are you supposed to do? So I'll be interested to see how they match up with a team like Providence. It's just consistently good, consistently rises to the challenge presented by other teams. I think it's going to be the true test to see if this Hartford team is for real or not.
Definitely, and it'll be interesting to see how things look over there. So let's get to our series at hand. The Bears are taking on the Charlotte Checkers, who finished third in the division. Tried to take a run there at the end of the season to perhaps challenge Hershey and or Providence for that second spot, but they sort of tailed off a little bit thanks to a rather long 5-game in Pennsylvania road trip to end the season, which their fate was sealed before that. But Charlotte is no slouch, mind you. They do have a good amount of depth there, even though Zach Delpy is with Florida team right now. Just announced today, Lucas Carlson got recalled to Florida team as well, possibly some extras as well. So we kind of have to wait and see how this Charlotte team's gonna be, because they might end up getting a good amount of help depending on how long their series goes. But for those that are wondering, the Bears went 3-1-1 against Charlotte this season, 2 losses in Charlotte in October to start the season. Getting a win at home December 6th, a loss at home against them 3-1 on January 7th, getting 3 points, going 1-1 back in Charlotte on February 18th and 19th, getting a win back earlier this month on April 8th, and then getting another win, and then actually losing on April 11th. So the Bears win 3-3, 1-1, 3 wins, 3 losses, overtime loss, and shootout loss. So pretty decent record against them. you just want to count straight up wins and losses, we were 3-5. If you want to get technical, so I think this is a team that is going to match up well against Hershey, a team that's always given them fits. And as we're going to show on the bar down here, the Bears get the first two games will take place in Charlotte this coming weekend on April 28th and 29th. That is a Friday and Saturday. And then the Bears will come back home the following Wednesday for Game 3 at Giants Center. Game 4 will be the Thursday, if I'm seeing that correctly, May 4th. And then Game 5, if needed, will be on Sunday, May 7th. So a pretty stretched out schedule. Charlotte is basically getting 5 home games in a row if you count the previous series. Some call that a advantage and all that, but Charlotte's a very long distance opponent, so that's just how this kind of played out.
Yeah, it is a shame that that's kind of a meager reward is now the Bears kind of have to try to win a game, at least one game down in Bojangles Coliseum. But the turnaround is that hey, those 3 games that will all most likely be decisive games will take place in Hershey. So I think that the way the Bears will look at this is they say, hey, we'd rather go down there and put the pressure on them with a win. I mean, you think back to the opening round of the 2016 Calder Cup playoffs when the Bears played the Portland Pirates. They went up to Portland and I believe got a split. And then they lost I believe, triple overtime game, but they had the luxury of having those last 2 games at home, which, I believe played a huge difference in that series and could be the same kind of situation here. So, like you said, I think it's going to be a very even matchup. Although I will say it will be interesting to see how the Bears match up at full strength. Because, I mean, we had that last matchup was that Tuesday game that you and I were up in the booth for, I believe. And the Bears were just eviscerated between, having some guys on the shelf with injury, Ethan Frank being one of them, and, still 2-3 guys up in Washington. Just curious to see how that's going to be a difference there. It's kind of like you alluded to with that last game, that 5-minute penalty kind of killed them type of thing. I'll be interested to see, just because the Bears are just so stacked now. It'll be insane to see how much of a difference we really see game 1 of that series versus that last Tuesday game. So it'll be very interesting to see how that comes out. It may be something that Charlotte hasn't really seen much of, just on how spread out the scheduling is. And, like you said, with Charlotte having some personnel issues, it'll be interesting to see if that carries over to the series as well.
Agreed. And I'm trying to think back, of course, the 2 April games we were dealing, Frank being injured. I think Scarbosa had a nagging injury he was dealing with. Back in February, the Bears were playing good, but not their best hockey by that point. You can probably argue the best game they played against them was probably the December 6th game, back when the Bears were playing really good around the holidays. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see with the Bears at full strength, realizing their power and potential by this point, where how they're going to stack up against the Checkers per se. And the Checkers have some pretty good goaltenders they've been relying on Mark Guzda, and now they went with JF Perube in Game 3, ended up getting the shutout against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, which I thought might have had a chance to upset this Charlotte team. But alas, it wasn't meant to be. And the team from Allentown. Too bad. Moving on. So I think it's going to be real interesting because the Bears have had this past week off just full of practice. I think either you or someone else said on Friday they did a mock scrimmage there at Giants Center to try and keep the boys fresh per se. You really think that's going to play an advantage into Hershey as opposed to Charlotte, who's had to play a really quick 3-game set, especially with some overtime factored in?
It is really interesting you say that because, I mean, if this series started this weekend, I would say absolutely. Charlotte would be weary and tested and all that sort of thing. But the lack of travel for them combined with the fact that, they essentially got to have a week now between series to kind of get reset. And it's kind of a good thing, I think, maybe not to punish them as much for having to play, especially in that kind of series that they had to deal with. Um, I think it maybe resets things a little bit. Like I said, if we were talking a fast turnaround, yes, absolutely, because you could even tell in that final game there that them putting an arrested goaltender in Berube was
Yeah.
absolutely the difference over Samuel Ersson, who it was a very interesting decision. But like you said, I think that Lehigh Valley's goaltending depth just wasn't as good as Charlotte's in that specific instance. Samuel Ersson may be the number one guy, but playing, almost 120 minutes of hockey is way harder than, having to, or, whatever. I guess it was double overtime. So, more like 100 minutes of hockey,
Still a lot, though. That's still a lot of hockey to be played.
absolutely. So I think it's going to be interesting. I'd like to say that'll get negated at that point, but yeah, it'll be very interesting to see how the Bears, with all this time off. I know, Friday, like you said, was basically a full game. They even tracked shots on goal, believe it or not, during that scrimmage, which was
Nice.
impressive. Even had some extended 6-on-5 last minute pressure situations there for the top line too, but ultimately didn't result in any extra scoring. But it was a very interesting experiment. You could tell the guys are just really anxious to start playing people other than each other. So it'll be really interesting to see how the rest and the time off factors in here, with the Bears being off for essentially 2 weeks.
Pretty much, yeah. And even Mike Nelson, Coach Nelson, Mike Nelson. I'm thinking Mystery Science Theater 3000 for some odd reason. Coach Nelson was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's play tonight. Let's play tomorrow. Let's play too." You can tell that he's just really chomping at the bit to get these guys back in there, because I know he knows as a coach, you don't want to let these guys sit and rest for proverbially too long, especially at this point in the season. Now, this isn't like where during the playoffs where you get like a 4 or 5 day stretch where you're waiting for your next opponent. That's different. You welcome that, especially with the near 2-month sprint that this could possibly turn into. But Coach Nelson he really wants to get the guys back out there. Weller does too. And, me watching the practice there last Tuesday, you could tell the guys are really ready to go. And hopefully we get Scarbosa back out there and have this roster at full strength. So, another aspect with the series that we've brought up is that the Bears are going to exercise some demons too, if we want to get to the 12th, because I firmly believe, I think Providence is the better team against Hartford, and this Bears team is going to have to go up there and beat their El Guapo there in Rhode Island as well. And I'm not trying to look too far ahead of Charlotte. I think Charlotte is very capable of taking this series, but this just feels like that if the Bears want to get back to the mountaintop where we tell ourselves every season where we deserve to be, we're gonna have to go through possibly 2 or 3 teams, and I'll count Hartford in that, who beat us in 15-16 with the Bork brothers, or 14-15, who beat us with them. That the Bears are gonna have to tackle ghosts of proverbial playoff past to get back to where they want to be.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts when you think back about it. I mean, it's all the 3 of these teams are coincidentally teams that eliminated the Bears from the division over years past. So Charlotte in 19, Providence in 17, and then Hartford in 15. It's every other year one of these teams beat the Bears. So, either way, you're going to have to go up against somebody that you're going to kind of cringe a little bit thinking about it. Like I cringe thinking about going back into Charlotte, because that, the memory of that series still sticks with me, years later. But like you said, it's the Atlantic Division is, if you could award the Calder Cup after the Atlantic Division, it's a very capable, it could be the real Calder Cup finals in a sense, just because, and that's not discounting anybody else in the league here, but it just speaks to the quality of competition in the Atlantic Division. And you really look at teams like Providence. Hershey hasn't won a game up there yet this season. They didn't win up there last season either. So it's really one of those things where you have that in the back of your mind there as you're going into a potential, not looking too far ahead, but potentially in that series too. And, Hartford's always been pretty tough on them up there too. And, as has Charlotte. So either way, like you said, to get back to that mountain, you're going to hit a couple rough patches, a couple of steep cliffs to try to climb. But it's all in the name of, hardening them for tougher competition and, a very much an unknown in a Western Conference team that Hershey hasn't seen at all this season that they'll have to play against. So like you said, Todd Nelson seemed really intense and ready just to have an opponent to study. In addition to, just getting play underway. So it's going to be really interesting to see just how everything unfolds here. And, very early tests to see if Hershey is as tough as we think they are too, for sure.
Agreed. And this is a best of 5 series. So, and I say this tongue in cheek, it's a quick series. It's not a best of 3, but it is a very quick of series that Bears fans know can go very south and pear-shaped very quickly. So the Bears, I think, best want to get at minimum get a split down there. There is no, well, let's just get points down there. No, this is wins and losses, period. A much different beast there in the playoffs. Some Bears fans leaving us some comments. Please, I know some of you are watching along on the fan club page, please leave a comment as well. I will try to respond to them. But also, just so everyone knows, because it's Facebook, your name will not show up. So please, try to say who you are with commenting or let us know where you are. Give a like to this, please, and information about the podcast down in the scroll bar as well. Bears fan saying hi, hello, who's ever watching this. Let's get 12. Very much agreed. Very agreed. But it is going to take, my math is correct, I think 14 wins. Someone told me there'd be no math involved. I think it's like
I think you're right. 14 sounds right.
14 wins to get to where we were. But they didn't I think pertaining towards Charlotte, but they didn't dominate us here in Hershey. Very true. Very true. I think looking at my my notes here, the Bears went 2-2 against Charlotte, here at home, which was the December, January, and 2 April games. That is true. But in this series, and in almost any series, you have to win on the road. You can't just say, well, we got 3 games in Hershey, we're going to be fine. No, that's why we're saying just get a split. I'm not asking to take both games down there. Would be nice. But I'm not saying take both. Just get us one. Win game 1, which would be preferred. But just get one while you're up there.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, Curtis, I'm sure it was in the back of your mind as much as it was in the back of mine when Hershey finished second instead of first in the last day of the season too. That hey, if we play Charlotte in the second, I'm not Charlotte, Providence in the second round, suddenly you're looking at. You have to win 1 game up there, minimum, in order to take that series. And the Bears haven't won a single game up in Providence. Not that, you're going to win every game at home in a 3-2 type of situation, with 3 games at home. But, it would be nice to have that in the back of your mind that, okay, we can win at home if need be. But, honestly, if I remember right, and I'm, stretching my memory back a little bit on 2017, I think the Bears kind of had a similar situation where they had to win at least once in Providence and they couldn't, and obviously some of that Phoenix Copley doesn't get hurt and they score on the same play. That still boils me a little bit when I think about it. That's a different series possibly too. But so, you really just have to take it game by game, not really think about that as a disadvantage. As a hockey player, you just can't let that enter your mind space. So I think that, for the guys, they're going to be focused. It's not even going to be on their minds. So that's for people like us to talk about rather than, the guys to worry about in the ice. So I have my utmost confidence that this group is as advertised. It looked like on Friday they were fully healthy. Nobody, just based on the lineup orders and stuff, it looks like they should be really good to go with, 4 potent lines. There's a lot of guys sitting out that shouldn't be sitting out, frankly, and wouldn't be sitting out in any other team. So I'm really anxious to see, if they can just be that team that we know they can be. And, with a lineup like we haven't seen, the Bears are obviously benefiting from Washington not making the playoffs in that respect at this point. But, it's now or never. Really got to make it happen here, and they got to show why Hershey finished and was in the top two for the majority of the season, and Charlotte wasn't. So, I think it's really up to the Bears it's a show me moment for sure for this group.
Agreed, definitely agreed that it's going to be a put up or shut up series that all right, we've done all this to get to this point, and now it's time to go out there and prove it. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this series. We're going to take a bit of a sponsor break, and we'll be right back right after this. Before we continue on, Bears fans, it's not just the Stanley Cup playoffs that are going on. It's NBA playoff time, and that means big hoops action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. Get in on the excitement of every game with a touch of a button. New customers can make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins. Plus, everyone can secure a no sweat same game parlay every day during the NBA playoffs. Open the DraftKings Sportsbook app, place a same game parlay on any NBA game, and if it doesn't hit, you'll get a bonus bet back up to $10. We already had some early action there in the NBA playoff as the Brooklyn Nets, you're out, as the Philadelphia 76ers have taken care of them and are moving on, but there's still plenty of action in the association. The first round will be wrapping up, so make sure you get in on the sweet, sweet round ball action known as the National Basketball Association. Download the app now and sign up with code THPN. New customers can make a $5 pregame moneyline bet and score $150 in bonus bets if their team wins. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NEW YORK or text HOPE New York 467-369. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific gambling responsible gambling resources. And now, on with the show. And we're back here on the Grit and Barrett podcast doing a preview of the Hershey Bears versus the Charlotte Checkers. Corey Swartz joining me. Corey, thank you for joining me and paying the proverbial bills, going through that DraftKings read as well. Something you got to do. Got to pay the bills. Got to do it. Necessary evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
thanks for having me.
Not a problem, man. So as we go on, let's get to some more fan comments here before we do move forward here. Ben says, win them both and then get out the brooms for the Checkers. Wishful thinking there, Ben boy. Very wishful thinking. I love a sweep. Oh, don't get me wrong. I love a sweep. But that's a tall order. Let's see what else we got here. Let's eat some Bojangles chicken and whoop some ass. Fried chicken. Delightful food down there at Mr. Bojangles Coliseum. So, as we're talking more about this series, we brought up depth with the Bears. That I know we said this at the beginning of the season that the Bears have an abundance of riches at the forward position, and we've seen this throughout the season when the Bears were hitting their call up and injury run. What team hasn't? And now I really feel like as we hit the Calder Cup playoffs, especially with having back-to-back games there in Charlotte and with a good amount of travel back, it really feels like we're going to be leaning into these guys like Julian Napravik, Shane Gersich, maybe getting Matt Strome in there for an extra game as well. It really feels like this is where our depth is really going to help us out, because depth scoring and any type of depth is what you want for a deep playoffs run, and something the Bears did not have at all last season going up against Wilkes-Barre. So I take it that's going to be a real advantage for the Bears as we head down to Charlotte this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, it's something we didn't have at all last season. It was, a situation you don't necessarily love to see. Have a guy like Bogdan Triniev thrust into the spotlight on one of the top lines because the Bears were just that bear on the forward line. And this season it's completely different. The way things are shaping up, there's going to be at least five guys that would be considered regulars, possibly sitting on the sidelines, and eight, including some of the black aces that are with the team right now. So, it's one of those situations where I don't know that there'll be necessarily a lot of lineup shakeups, depending, it had to be something pretty extreme to see some guys get subbed out. I think the lineups you're going to see in game one are probably going to be what you're going to see for the majority of the playoffs, injuries notwithstanding. But, it leaves some really good guys on the sidelines. I mean, it's guys that have been, kind of here doing their thing and, like you said, really providing that extra bit of schooling, the Julian Napravniks, the Shane Gersiches, the Matt Stroms, the guys you can really plug into those specific lines, the fourth line, the third line, even as high as the second line if you really have to. But with guys like Beck Malmstein being back, Alexei Protas will be here for this run. You know, trying to think of anybody else. There's somebody else who's up in Washington who escapes me at the moment. But all those guys, Joe Snively is probably who I'm thinking of. All those guys being back, it changes the line combinations for the better in a lot of ways. Because you're going to have some quality wingers, Snively, Pilon, Annis, to flank Connor McMichael on the second line. That's been a great trio to be a 1-2 punch with the Scarbosa, Frank, Vecchione line, which will thankfully, hopefully, be reunited for this series as well. The Bears have been missing them for the majority of the month of April, at least the last, chunk of games there, certainly. And then, you have a third line with Hendrix Lapierre centering, a couple of skill guys down there too, whoever's not in the second line, essentially. So, and even the fourth line, they've been instrumental in providing offense at key junctures when the Bears need it the most. So I'm very excited to see what line they're going to be able to put on, but you also have that comfort level, right? Those guys you know that you can rely on the back end and the backside of it. They can prize a solid extra line and a half, more so than that. You just have the luxury, absolute luxury, and even on defense too. You look at guys like Logan Day and Jake Massey. Now, I don't think we'll see both of those guys dressed at the same time to start off the game, but one guy who deserves to get a jersey, in my opinion, is Logan Day. I think he's been fantastic paired with Aaron Ness. Obviously, that leaves you a difficult decision of a guy like Bobby Nardella or Lucas Johansson in some ways, but again, wonderful problem to have when have the ability to drop and pick up guys, and mix and match if you really see fit for it. So it'll be really interesting to see how, Coach Nelson approaches that first game. And if any decisions and changes be made, I don't think we're going to see it too much, but it's possible.
Agreed. Agreed. I think he'll definitely be swapping guys in and out as we get to these back-to-back games because you have a Friday, Saturday back-to-back. That's games 1 and 2 in Charlotte, which those will definitely be utilized. Game 3 on Wednesday, May 3rd, and then you have the ever elusive, ultra rare Thursday night home Bears game. You're probably going to want to utilize that as well too. So it's definitely a luxury that you really want this time of year to be able, like you said, the Logan Days, the Matt Strums, the third and fourth line, and even the fifth line in and out guys per se are the guys we're really going to rely on.
And think about it.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Richard. Think about it this way too. It puts added, not pressure, but the added thought of the guys in the lineup that say, hey, if I don't give it 100% here, like you may be able to at, certain points, coast a little bit more. If, those guys are looking at, getting out of the lineup, working themselves out of it, because, you got these hardworking guys that are, obviously cheering for their success, but also they're, if, for whatever reason, one of these line combos doesn't work out, you have that luxury. So it should, be ample incentive as if the Calder Cup is not already for these guys to work their tails off to, really impress at this stage.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. So, a few more questions before we, before we get on out of here. And I'm not sure how Bears faithful thinks about this, and I'm sure that they'll let us know. Is Hunter Shepard the number one the entire playoffs, the entire ones? Because it's the era of recency. We always remember the last thing we saw, and He's had a little rough down the stretch, but I think that was more of a victim of circumstance more than anything. But it really seems like Hunter is going to be the number one guy as we head into the postseason. Team MVP, Hunter Shepard, I should say. But he should be the one to go number one. And do you start him in both games in Charlotte?
That's a tough call, honestly. I mean, you could. It is the era of the 1A and 1B, right? And
Correct.
while Zach Fucale hasn't been horrendous or anything in my mind, the consistency factor is what I think gives Shepard this opportunity to likely run with. Now, it is a good question. Obviously, if you get a Charlotte Lehigh Valley situation, game 2 to game 3 of their playing round, absolutely, you go to Zach Fucale after a double triple overtime situation, and you do it with
Yeah.
ease. It's not bad at all. It's not there. It was very rare in the regular season for a Bears goalie to go back to back, and it was usually out of necessity. I mean, we saw it with Clay Stevenson
Correct.
a couple of times. We saw
Yeah.
Shepard do the same thing. It's rare. So again, great luxury, great problem to have in a lot of ways. But again, a big question mark is with two of these, games 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4 on back to backs. I would have a hard, that's why Juha Latola is there to, really be able to gauge the preparation and, capability for these guys to go back to back. I wouldn't be surprised if they, rotate goalies, especially if Shep steals them a win in game 1. You have that luxury to say, hey, Zach, this is your shot here. He delivers them a game 2 win, so be it. That's continues to be a great problem to have. So I think it probably really just depends on performance and how the goaltender is feeling rather than kind of going in with that set. All right, we're going to give Shep this game. We're going to give Zach this one game, because we've seen them go in with less preparation. These guys are guys that will bring it no matter what. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see both goalies, but I think if one goalie gets hot, I wouldn't be surprised to see, if Shep puts up a shutout or something, or just an outstanding performance. I wouldn't even be surprised to see him go back to back if they're up for it. But, Hershey's, you're looking at goals against average. It's the best tandem in the American Hockey League at this point. So you have that luxury of saying, hey, we like both of our guys. Again, I'm glad I'm not the one making that decision. I know people will be looking at that decision pretty closely, but frankly, I'm okay with it either way, truthfully.
I think that it will be very interesting, like how Hunter plays and how they tackle the two games in Charlotte. And let's say Hunter does have a good game Friday, but they decide to go with Fucale on Saturday, and they end up getting a win, and they get both with both goalies. And I'll tell you what, as a podcaster and as content, people as you and me both are, boy, you are just giving us a sports buffalo that we are just going to kill and take for fur and leather and eat off of for days and weeks off end. Now, it obviously won't be that way with a quick series, but it'd be very interesting if both goalies could go down there and get a win in Charlotte, but a very, very tall order.
That
Indeed.
That's scary, though. I mean, if say that does happen in this series and the Bears maybe
Yeah.
get out with a quick back-to-back or something like that, if I'm any other team, that means it's nothing, to be excited about by saying, oh, we don't have to deal with this goalie. It's a two-headed monster in a sense.
Mhm.
They get, you say to yourself as another team, you're like, man, they get to throw whichever goalie they want at us. And, it doesn't matter. It's a great problem, unlike Lehigh Valley, who, they were too worried about going to their backup and it cost them. The Bears don't have that issue. So
No.
it's a very good thing to have, I think, going for you, certainly. And, we saw it with great Bears teams of the past. I mean, you look at the 2016 team that came so close. I don't think Justin Peters was everybody's scheduled goaltender to, make that deep playoff run that the Bears did, but because they had,
No.
him and Dan Ellis, as I'm sure you remember,
Oh, yes.
you know, Peters got hot and they rode him for it, and he was great.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely.
it really all, I think they're going to be leaning on the staff, leaning on the goaltenders there to, help make that decision clear. And, one goalie takes charge. I'm all for it. I'm here for it.
Definitely. I mean, yeah, I remember that. Dan Ellis getting lit up in Portland. Justin Peters starts game 2. And you're right. They ride a hot goaltender all the way to the finish line. which was unfortunately 4 games in Cleveland, but we don't talk about that.
And you even think
So,
back to
what?
2010 is you think. So I'm sorry, but
Yeah,
one more
no,
thought.
no, no, no. You're right. You're
You
right.
think
Was it
you think back to
Newbie was?
2010, yeah, Michael Neuwirth. You think back to 2009 when they won that series against Wilkes-Barre
Hmm.
in Game 7. Those I was amazed looking back at this because I didn't, you take it for granted in hindsight, but that was a 3 games and 3 night series, and
Hmm.
Newbie started all three and won all three, including at least the 2 shutouts in Game 6 and Game 7. So it's kind of nuts to think about how, not that you don't want to get too far in your own head with that sort of thing too, because it's if one guy is confident and he says I can take it, let him have it by all means. We've seen that play itself out, and I'm excited to see how that might play out with this tandem here. Goaltending's always a strength in the Washington organization, so very excited to see this generation hopefully take the reins.
Very much so, and I definitely remember those series as well. I think back in as we talked about 09 and 10, in the 3 games in the 5 game set. I mean, the Bears won the series in 5 against Bridgeport, but that was 3 games in Bridgeport, a weekend set in Bridgeport. So, very very different times, very different times than where we are now. So before we get on out of here, let's make some predictions on this. I think we know where both of us are going to go, but it's going to be a factor of how many. And I'm going to say depends on my heart or my head, but I'm going to say Hershey in the heck, I'll go bold. I'll say Hershey in 4. Give me 4. It seems like it could go that route.
Oh man, I may go more bold than you on this one. Then I'll say I was originally going to say Hershey in 4, but I'll say Hershey in 3. I like this team
Whoa.
very much. I like this group very much. I like just the loaded potential of these lines. I think that Hershey is a four-headed monster in terms of their forward lines. You saw it earlier this season in the Providence game that unfortunately the Bears did not win, but the fourth line carried the offense in that game. You got Beck Bauenstein down there, probably somebody like Mason Morelli on the fourth line there too. That's a hard-working line that you may be tempted to take a shift off. I just don't know that Charlotte has the depth to match Hershey's full power in a sense. It's kind of like the Emperor in Return of the Jedi standing up and being like, experienced the full power of the dark side and just
Mm-hmm.
zaps Luke at
Yes.
his full
Yep.
Jedi potential type of thing. Now obviously we don't want to make that comparison too strongly because we know how that movie ends, right? But it reminds you of that, where it's just sort of like, whoa, like this guy is just on a different power level. Think back to any episode of Dragon Ball Z or something like that, right? Where it seems pretty weak, they let him power up and they regret it. It's a Cell type of thing. So I just think that Hershey has the length, the muscle, and the depth to endure anything that Charlotte can throw at them. I will say if it does go to 4, I won't be surprised, but it really just depends on if Hershey can exercise those demons at Bojangles in those first 2 games.
Agreed. The big games are going to be there in at Mr. Bojangles Coliseum there on Friday and Saturday. Definitely big games for the boys in chocolate and white. So let's go to the other side of the bracket real quickly. Why the heck while we're here? Providence versus Hartford. The series for them starts Friday, Saturday in Providence. So Bears fans, you're not the only ones. Wednesday will be in Hartford on Wednesday, May 5th, at the XL Center if needed, and then Sunday, May 7th, back at Providence if needed. So, see, Bears fans, you're not the only ones. So, I think Providence takes it in 5. I think this is going to be a knockdown, drag out series. As even though Providence is the number 1 seed, I think that is a bit deceptive with as much as the Bruins have taken from them. And they've been inconsistent down the stretch. They've been decent against Hershey, but they've been inconsistent down the stretch.
Oh, absolutely. I would say this goes 5 as well, but I'll take Hartford in a surprise upset of this one, possibly, because not only did Hartford fare pretty well against Providence in the regular season, but Hartford, I mean, the big question for me for Hartford to win this series is if Dylan Garand can withstand it. If they're going to be without Louis Domingue, fine, but Garand more than proved that he was capable of shutting down a good team in Springfield. Didn't face quite as many shots as I think that Joel Hofer did in that series. But, the teams played good defense in front of him. I love some of Hartford's players in, Tanner Fritz, Laurie Pajuniemi, Ryan Carpenter's another one that comes to mind immediately, Ty Emberson. They have a lot of, I think, deceptively good offensive pieces. Now, the question is, can they, like you said, survive a slobber knocker of a series with Providence that can match them and then some? I could easily see this going to 5 games in overtime for at least a couple of games and in game 5. And one team's going to be very salty about it, and it's going to lead to a very salty series next season. So, and try saying that 5 times real fast. I think that it's going to just be a really great time for hockey fans to watch in the Atlantic Division. So I'm excited to see how it unfolds.
Definitely. And I'm not saying this as a shill for them, but Bears fans, please go check out AHL TV. They posted a really good price, not just for the Bears, but for all the playoffs in general. I think it's somewhere around $30. I know some Bears fans are like, bad, this technology, but for $30 for the amount of content that you're getting this time of year, it is a very good deal. And believe you me, they are not paying me to say this whatsoever. Me personally, I think it's been money well spent, that especially if you can't get to Giant Center, a way of watching the boys on the road. So just so that's not just for the Bears, that's going to be all of the Calder Cup playoffs in general, just as a public service announcement to intelligent Bears fans that are listening to this. In the North, the semifinals are set between the Toronto Marlies and the Utica Comets. Utica in a big comeback fashion, taking down Les Rockets de Laval. So both Eastern Conference finalists last year are eliminated. Their series starts on Thursday in Toronto, and they'll sort of follow the same schedule as the Bears, Thursday, Saturday in Toronto, 2 in Utica the following weekend, and then a game 5 in Toronto if need be. The other series of Syracuse versus Rochester is going on as we speak. Syracuse holds a 2-0 lead. They don't play again until this coming Friday, and better hope they wrap it up then, because game 5 in Syracuse isn't until the following weekend, Saturday, May 6th. So a very stretched out schedule for that series. So the North is definitely going to be interesting to watch, because any one of those 4 teams, I think, could do it. Now, I think Syracuse is going to take down Rochester, but among those 3, any 3 of those teams could take the North.
Yeah, and there's a lot of potential for upsets. I mean, we saw with Toronto, they took the division a long time ago, but they haven't been the same team that they were before the trade deadline. So, I really think that, it's up for grabs as far as who emerges from that division. But will they be as tough as an Atlantic Division team to make it out of that? They may benefit from those teams beating up on each other for so long that maybe they catch somebody, while they're down and out, or, weakened a little bit possibly, but that would be a really hard series to win, especially in 7 games. So I think there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of potential for upsets, a lot of chances for a team we've not expected to see to emerge from that division. It'll be really interesting to see how this one really goes. I think it'll be fun to watch kind of on the other side of it. And like you said, with AHL TV, you get all the games with this package. So for a good deal, I mean, they're not paying, like you said, they're not paying us to say that. We're paying them to be able to tell you that type of thing. But yeah, it's a great deal, I think, for sure.
And again, folks, I'm saying this, I'm not a shill for this. Again, not because we're associated with them in any way. I just think for what you're going to get and heading into the end of the season, I just think it's a really good offer. Just sit there. So that'll pretty much do it for this preview, and hopefully, Corey, you and me can do more of these heading into the month of May. But give you a minute here to promote your website and whatever else you're working on, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited for the, hopefully the opportunity to do this a few more times with you, for sure. You can find me over on Twitter at HBH Nation Blog. That's where the majority of my content goes. At FPH Bears, if you're watching online, you can see that as my Field Pass handle, where I post some of my articles and some other stuff there. Those are the 2 ones. You can follow my personal page at CSWA11, SCSWA11. Those are my free handles there, and where everything goes. So if you're over there, you'll see it all. So that's where to find me. And like you said, Richard, hopefully we get to do this for quite some time. I'm looking forward to it.
And be sure to check out his content. I think today, at the time of this podcast drop, did a really good article on Riley Sutter and the challenges he's gone through. That is yours, right?
Yeah, that was mine. That was one I had on the cooker for quite some time, and really impressed with how he's kind of turned around his season and his career in a lot of ways. In the contract season as restricted free agent, he surprised. I think it was the most pleasant surprise of the season. To see him really carve out that fourth line role and penalty killers. I always think back to when he willingly stood in front of a Marty Ferk slap shot from the point. If you forget, Marty Ferk had the hardest shot in all of hockey at one point prior to the pandemic at 109.2 miles per hour.
Mm-hmm.
And Sutz just stood there and took it. I was impressed. And, he's one of those just selfless character guys you could see being a major part of some important hockey games down the stretch in May and June.
Agreed. Good stuff out of you, Corey. And Bears fans, well, this is it. And you're ready. And the Charlotte Checkers fans are ready. We all are, because this is all the time that we've spent playing in the regular season. The past 6 months have come down to this. So, in the words of a song from Tangled, the animated series, the line in the sand and the moment is at hand, Bears fans. I'm ready. You're ready. Both sides are ready. And for me, in this podcast, I'm ready as I'll ever be. And I'm sure all of you are as well. Go enjoy the hockey. See you next weekend, and I'll catch you next time.